hello, and welcome to Reducing the Inflammatory Load on Your Body. Thank you for joining me. My name is Lisa Higgins, and if you haven't come across me ever before, I am a lymphedema therapist and a medical intuitive, which is kind of an odd mix. But it gives me, these two things give me a really lovely insight into, so I'm just going to check to see whether there are messages coming in because I've not done this before. So anyway, we're going to see what we can do. Right, so I have a lovely insight into what is going on in the background of the conditions of the people who come in to see me. And I have so many wonderful clients who come in and they're eating really well, they're exercising. If they've got lymphedema or lipedema, then they are wearing their compression, they're doing everything right, and yet they still have pain. They still have inflammation. And so that started me wondering, what's that about? How can I work with that? How can I help people to release the inflammation that's going on in the background that we're not looking at? So that's where this little workshop came about. And if you are joining me live, then feel free to interact, leave me a comment. Hopefully I say, because I've never run one of these before, hopefully Facebook will send me a notification saying that somebody has commented on anything like that. So what I'm doing is I've got my phone here to look at comments because I'm pretty sure it's not going to show me up on the screen here. So if you see me looking down, that's what it is. Right, and if you are watching the replay another day, then use a hashtag replay or after party and interact as if you're watching it live. And what I'll do is I will come back and answer your questions as best I can over the next few days. Also, I just wanted to put a comment to those who have submitted questions for me. What I might do is I might answer those questions in the group itself, because it's going to be really hard to answer specific health questions in this talk because it's just for an hour and it's just going to be sort of a general introduction to inflammation and what we can do to reduce it. So, like I said, we know about the inflammations in food, external toxins, stress. These are the common things that we know a lot about and we look out for. Maybe not the external toxins. What do I mean by that is I'm talking about things like chemicals in our cleaning products, our skincare products, in the food that we eat. So that kind of external toxin, or the chemicals that are sprayed out in the gardens and we then eat that food. But I'm not really going to be talking about that today. I'm talking about the emotional and mental reasons behind inflammation. So, a dictionary meaning of inflammation, because I think it's always good to sort of get clear on what the definition is and what I'm talking about, because it's kind of two different things. So, dictionary.com says, inflammation is, and I'm reading off a little card here, a localized physical condition in which a part of the body becomes reddened, swollen, hot, and often painful, especially as a reaction to injury or infection. And yep, that's absolutely what inflammation is. That's textbook inflammation. But I'm going to give you what I think inflammation is, or when I'm looking at inflammation in my clinic, this is what I'm looking at. A feeling of discomfort in the body, and that can be a physical feeling like bloating, swelling, pain. A mental feeling, negative thoughts, putting yourself down, or hearing external criticism. An emotional depression, anxiety, self-doubt, a lack of confidence, or even a spiritual, which could be an out-of-body feeling or a complete disassociation. So you're there, but you're not there. You're just numb. And that's a really common one that I see. So if you've addressed your nutrition, your exercise, your compression, if you've got lymphedema or lipedema, and your body is still inflamed and in pain, then what are you meant to do? Because modern medicine, going to your GP and saying, I'm doing all of this and I still feel like there's something wrong, they're not going to know how to deal with that. So I've come up with a little, sorry, there was a notification popping up there, very distracting. This is my first Facebook Live, so bear with me while I adjust to all of the things in Facebook land. Okay, so I've come up with this term, which I think covers everything. It's called release. So release and reframe, eliminate, learn, exercise, ask, self-care or support, and expectations. So I'm going to talk about each of these and hopefully give some information about what I mean. So release or reframe, that's the first R in release. Now this is the main thing that we need to focus on when we're looking at emotional and mental inflammation. And what I'm looking at releasing is self-judgment, self-talk, reframing how you talk about yourself to others, reframe how we talk to ourselves. Now I'm really going to delve into this now, and I apologize for what I'm about to say. It's necessary, and I will not leave you sitting with how I'm sure you're going to be feeling once I finish saying all of these things. Now, these are statements that I have heard in my clinic, that clients have told me that they have heard themselves. Some of these statements I've experienced myself. They're going to be uncomfortable, and there's a reason why I'm doing this, because I want you to feel into that discomfort. I want you to notice where it hits you. I'm pretty sure I know where it's going to hit you, but I'm going to ask you anyway. So apologies. I'm not saying these directly to you, but there is a reason. These are some statements that I have heard in my clinic. You are disgusting. You should be ashamed of yourself. How could you let yourself get this way? You're wearing that? You're so stupid. You're terrible with money. Cheer up, love. It may never happen. Now, some of these are kind of light-hearted. Some of these are really heavy duty, really awful to be told these things. And I've had clients who've been told, you're disgusting, as they're walking down the street or they're sitting in a cafe. You should be ashamed of yourself. It's hard enough if you're told that by a stranger walking past on the street. But if you're told that by somebody you love, or somebody who's meant to love you, a family member, a friend, a partner, a work colleague, these are, man, where do you feel that in your body? If you imagine somebody saying that to you, somebody that you know and trust, where do you feel that? Imagine if it was your doctor saying that to you. Because my clients hear that from their doctors sometimes too. And that is appalling. What do you think that does to your body? Where do you feel it? I know where I feel it. I feel it in the pit of my stomach, like I have been punched in the guts. And it's this physical, visceral reaction that pushes you into fight, flight, or fawn, or freeze if you prefer. So either you go, well, piss off, how dare you talk to me like that, which I wish I could do that. Most people can't, most people don't, and hats off to anybody who can do that. Most people will either go into fawn or freeze, where they just are so shocked that they can't say anything. That would be me. And some just run away, get the hell out of there to keep themselves safe. But what happens in your body when you hear those things, or anything that is of a negative aspect to you, anything that is a trigger? What happens is your body releases cortisol, the stress hormone. So you have a stress reaction, which is probably what you felt when I said those horrible phrases. You probably had a whole kind of feeling, and a feeling of almost wanting to vomit, or just this horrible cold sweat that comes through you. That is a stress response. And what happens is you are in heightened stress. Cortisol is being released. And when cortisol is released, what happens is it increases inflammation. And when you have increased inflammation, then you have increased pain, increased symptoms. That seems pretty straightforward, right? So somebody's hurling abuse at you, you have a stress reaction. That makes perfect sense that you do that. You feel it in your body, and it's just awful. But you can identify that feeling in your body. But here's the thing. How many times a day, an hour even, do you walk past a mirror or a shop window or anything reflective and look at yourself and say to yourself, you are disgusting. You should be ashamed of yourself. How could you let yourself get this way? Well, you're so stupid. How could you make a mistake like that? Ugh. Now, how many times do you talk to yourself like that? The thing is, whether you are hearing that abuse from outside of you, or if it is playing out in here, your body cannot tell the difference. It just can't. So what happens is each time you say that sort of thing to yourself, your body has a stress reaction. It releases cortisol. But the thing is that we don't feel it in the same way when it's internal. When we're saying it to ourselves, we don't notice it. It's just become part of our our essence. It's just part of who we are, that we just constantly put ourselves down. But each time you put yourself down, you spike your cortisol, you spike your inflammation, and then that can spike your pain and any of the symptoms that you're feeling. Does anyone relate to that? Who here beats themselves up multiple times a day? Now, I'm just going to get you to put your hand on your heart here and take a breath in so that we can release that. And welcome to those who've joined. I'm sorry, it seems that there's been a little bit of trouble getting into Facebook, but here now. So take a good deep breath. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk to you about ways that we can minimize the self-talk, minimize all of this abuse that we're hurling at ourselves. I always like to tell people one of the favorite experiments that I've read about, and it was when I was doing some work with Joe Dispenza. And he talks about an experiment where there were 3 groups set up and brain scans were taken before the experiment. The first group was given a piece of music to learn on the piano. Sheet music, this is how you play it, off you go, tap, 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 tap. You go and practice that every day for an hour a day, for 3 weeks, and, get excited, you're learning something new, great. The second group they got in and gave the same sheet music, and they taught them how to play it, but instead of teaching them how to play it on a piano, they taught them the fingering and asked them to imagine that they were playing it on a piano. And to go away and practice an hour a day for 3 weeks and build the emotion just like the other group. You're getting excited, you're learning something new. Come back in 3 weeks and we'll see how you do. And the third group was a control, so they just sent them away with nothing to do. 3 weeks later, they brought them back. And the first group, who had the sheet music and actually played on a piano, they did a brain scan and they could see that there were new neural pathways created, which is what you would expect if you're learning something new. The second group, who had pretended that they were learning on the piano itself, but had raised their emotion and become excited that they were learning something, they had the same new neural pathways as the first group. And the third group, when they were scanned, they had no new neural pathways, which is what you'd expect because they hadn't gone off and learned anything new. So what they've extrapolated from that is that your body cannot tell the difference between something that is actually happening or something that you're imagining. The importance of this is when you spend a lot of time thinking about an event that has happened, or a wrong that has been done to you, or a comment that has been said to you, or any of those things, or an illness or pain, and you keep thinking, oh my gosh, that happened and oh, that was awful. And it was awful. But each time you think about it, you're recreating that whole episode in your body again. So you're then recreating the release of cortisol, which then releases inflammation and increases your pain and inflammation. So how do you even break that cycle? And well, that takes time. There's no quick fix for that because it's a complete overhaul and a release and a reframe of how you think. So I'm just going to read. I pulled a card from one of my favorite little health decks, and it probably will come. Here you go. Yeah. So Health and the Law of Attraction from Abraham Hicks. So Esther and Jerry Hicks with Abraham. And I love these cards because they're simple. So there's the card. I wish I could work out how to do this sensibly. Okay. So it says, many people have come to feel vulnerable about the unseen parts of their bodies, and that feeling of vulnerability is a very strong catalyst in the perpetuation of illness. When you look for something wrong, you usually find it. The law of attraction insists on it. A continual searching for things wrong with your body will, in time, produce evidence of something wrong. Not because it was lurking there all along and you finally probed long enough to find it, but because repeated thought eventually creates its equivalent. How amazing is that? The law of attraction, what you think about you create. But when you're in pain and all you can think about is the pain, I understand it's really difficult to break that cycle. So the second part of the release is to eliminate. And sometimes that's easier said than done as well. So we're looking to eliminate toxins. Now, toxins can be food. So that can be the chemicals and additives that are put into our foods, sprayed on our foods, pesticides, that whole crazy stuff. But then the processing of foods, so that there's lots of sugar and just any food that's processed is high in inflammation. So as a society, we rely heavily on processed foods. That's going to raise our inflammation. I'm not really focusing on that today. But we're looking to eliminate toxic food, toxic household products, toxic skincare products. And here's where it gets fun: toxic people, toxic jobs. If you have a family member who pushes your buttons, and you know that when you're around them that you are going to feel horrible, it would be advisable to learn some tools to minimize the exposure. But with family, that's not always possible. Family gatherings, you can't avoid a whole bunch of people who you grew up with. So it's about learning to manage your stress around those people. So whether that is energetically preparing by doing some breath work, or by visualizing a bubble of light around you. One of my favorites is to visualize a mirror facing outwards in a circle around you, so that whatever that person sends your way gets reflected right back to them without you having to intervene. It's a very easy one to imagine, that one. But getting family out of your life is difficult. I understand that, and saying, stay away from family who are toxic towards you is not very practical, but there are things that you can learn to manage your exposure and to manage how you react to it. Toxic jobs. So many of us stay in jobs because we have to, because that's our bread and butter, because we have no choice. If we lose that job, there are no other jobs around. But sometimes that job is causing you more pain than anything else. And that, if you get to a Sunday night and you just go into the complete slump of, oh God, I'm back to work tomorrow, this is horrible, then I'd really encourage you to look at an exit strategy. Look at some way where you can change your exposure to that job. Or these days you can work from home a lot of times. That is the best option for people who can't be around the toxic people at work. I'm not going to be talking too much about how we eliminate this sort of stress, but this is something that we can look at a little further down the line. The next part of the process is L for learn. So I encourage you to learn everything you possibly can about what serves your body, what nourishes your body, what makes your body feel great. Because we're not always 100% of the time in pain. Oh, I hope we are not. That would be incredibly difficult if you are. But we have moments of joy, moments of happiness. And so I encourage you to think about what brings you joy, what makes your body light up. And that can be food, exercise, interests or activities, or your job. For me, my job lights me up. I get to help people every single day, and that is the best feeling ever. But also think about what doesn't serve you. So I encourage you to become aware of what your body's doing in different situations. So if you are going out to dinner with a group of friends, and that is just something that you so look forward to, but you know there's one person in the group who you just can't sit next to because they are going to piss you off. They're going to push on that button until they get a reaction, and it happens every single time. And that then clouds the whole idea of going out to dinner with this group of people who you love spending time with. So that in itself is a stressful event, which causes your cortisol to go up, your inflammation to go up, and your pain to go up. And so you then think, oh, look, I can't go to that gathering. It's just too hard and I'm in too much pain and I'll feel even worse. But the fact of the matter is, if you sit yourself as far away from that person and go along to the dinner, once you're there, you're going to feel great. And it's actually going to serve your body to be in the environment with a group of people who predominantly serve you well. People who nourish you, people who you enjoy being around. And it's the same with food, you know. I see so many people who have these amazing ways of eating. They're fantastic. And, you know, there's no inflammatory foods, there's no processed foods. Phenomenal. But they're obsessed about it. So that every single meal is built around, oh no, I can't eat that because that's bad for my body. And yes, it is. But you completely being in the restrictive mode all the time creates a stress response in your body and creates inflammation. So again, let's take the example of going out to dinner with this great group of friends, and your stress response is, oh, but there's always food there that is so tempting and I can't eat it and I don't want to be around that food. You know what? How would it be if every now and then you cut yourself a bit of slack and decide, well, you know what? Just tonight, while I'm with these friends, while I'm having a great time, I'm going to have a glass of wine or a piece of bread or something on the forbidden list. And I'm not saying that it's not going to cause a reaction in your body. It most certainly will. But if you make the decision that I'm going to go along to this and I'm going to have a glass of wine and I am going to enjoy every mouthful of that wine, and you know what? Tomorrow I'll deal with the pain, but that's okay. I know there's going to be pain. Right now I'm going to enjoy myself. How does that feel? How does that sit in your body? I know I do that quite a lot. You know, I went home recently and where I come from, there's a lot of gluten. And I just knew that I couldn't avoid it. And I thought, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm going to put up with the pain and I'm going to enjoy all these foods from my childhood that I love that I never eat. And it took me 3 days. 3 days before I had swollen feet, a bloated belly, pain, and just felt horrible. But you know what? I sucked it up because I was going to be there for 10 days. And I thought, when I get back home, I'll jump back on the bandwagon. Now, it's not always possible to do that, of course. If your pain is too much, then I get that. But sometimes the restrictions that we put on ourselves around eating well, in particular, those can cause us as much inflammation as the actual foods as we're trying to avoid. So learn where you can push the boundaries, experiment a little bit. I can cope with 1 glass of wine if I don't eat any of the other inflammatory foods. Negotiate with yourself, but allow yourself to enjoy going out with friends, enjoy a naughty treat every now and then. Look at things like your exercise. You know, people say to me, oh, well, I've got lymphedema or lipedema. Is running okay? Or is that going to inflame my body? And that's a really great question. My answer is always, do you enjoy running? And if the answer is yes, then how do you feel once you finished running? And if the answer is great, then do it. Do the exercise that may not work for somebody else if it works for you. But this thing of, oh, I've been told that I should be running. Well, do you like running? No, I hate it. Then don't do it. Find something that you enjoy. Because if you enjoy something, you're going to stick to it. And it's not going to be causing inflammation in your body. Doing the wrong exercise for you, that's going to be inflammatory. Interesting, huh? Okay, so the next thing we're looking at is the exercise. Well, actually, we've talked about that. I kind of merged it together. But I'm going to add in a few little things. So what suits you best in your exercise? For a lot of the women that I work with lymphedema or lipedema, walking in the water is the best exercise because it's great for your lymphatic system and it's gentle on your joints. Some people hate the water. So if you hate the water, don't do that. Aqua aerobics, fun way to do it. If you don't like the water, then just walking on land. Great. It's a cardio and it is gentle on your joints if you're not really pounding the pavements. I recommend yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi. Any of the breathing exercises, any of those things that just are focusing on the breath, because breath work is the most important tool that we have to reduce inflammation. And it doesn't cost anything, and you don't look silly doing it. Nobody knows you're doing it, and you can bring it in immediately as you need it. If you enjoy lifting weights, weights are fabulous for bone density as we get older. So if you are into weights, do the weights. Some people enjoy HIIT training, so high intensity interval training, so short bursts of really heavy duty exercise. If that works for you and doesn't cause a flare up in your joints or in your pain, then do it. It is a fabulous exercise. I personally can think of nothing worse. Mary's just asked, are you from Wales? Okay, I'll get rid of the elephant in the room. I am not from Wales. I am from Trinidad, but I've lived in 5 countries, so I've got a really mishmash of an accent, and it's really hard to pick. And most people ask if I'm Scottish. I like the Wales thing because I love that accent. But there you go. So I'm a blend. Okay, so great exercise that is fun and fantastic cardio is dance. And the benefit is you get to have music on as well. So a bit of salsa or Latin dancing or African dancing or Bollywood dancing. Great exercise, great fun. All right. Mary says, that's why I couldn't figure out your accent. I'm normally good at that. But yeah, no, people try and guess it all the time and they never do. So you're not alone. Okay, so another thing that I put in the exercise basket, which isn't necessarily exercise, but because it involves a breath, I put singing in as an exercise. Maybe we can call it a pastime. So singing is a really physical pastime. You know, you're using breath work, you're having to use your diaphragm, you're having to stand and take big breaths. So it's a really wonderful way of reducing inflammation in your body. And plus, it's also a great way of expressing, because a lot of us who are high in inflammation and who put ourselves down and beat ourselves up, we don't express what we actually want to say. So, you know, breath work of any type. And I love singing as a breath work. Right, the next one is ask for help. Who's good at asking for help? I'm learning. So ask for help from your family, from your friends, from your community. And your community can be physical, so church, community center, your aqua aerobics group. I know they're really good at being social. Or it could be Facebook groups online. Because quite often we feel really isolated. When we beat ourselves up or put ourselves down, we tend to stay in our heads a lot. We tend to just ruminate over things, and sometimes we just need to reach out and talk to other people. Go for a walk. You don't need to talk to somebody when you go for a walk. Just being out with somebody else is going to be beneficial to helping you reduce the amount of inflammation in your body. That's social interaction. So coming out of, all that COVID restriction, everybody was inflamed. Everybody was struggling in some way because we didn't have interaction. We didn't have touch. We didn't have meetings of people. That social interaction is so important. So ask for help from your community. You can ask for help from your medical team. Your allopathic doctors and that sort of stuff don't tend to be hugely helpful, but complementary therapists generally are. So if you're seeing a naturopath, a homeopath, someone like me, a massage therapist, or going into your local health food store, they are fabulous at offering help, and they are great. If you go in there and say, look, I'm really inflamed all the time, and this is how I eat, this is how I exercise, everything's great, but I'm still feeling inflamed. What can you suggest? And quite often at the health food store, there are naturopaths on duty, and they can advise you on some supplements to take that help to reduce stress or anxiety, because those are massive triggers, huge triggers for inflammation in the body, and we just ignore them. So there are lots of different people around that we can ask for help and get support from. It's so important that we find our people, who we can talk to, who we can be safe around. Another good one too is support groups. In-person support groups, online support groups. Wonderful resource. Okay, so the next S is for, again, self-care and support. So I'd encourage you to set up some routines for your self-care. Whether that's an exercise routine, your food prep, breath work, mindfulness, gratitude, that's a big one, or affirmations. Now, I'm putting a proviso here with affirmations, and I'm going to talk about that now. So, affirmations can actually be really stressful. If I was to say to you, the best way to turn everything around about your self-talk or how you're putting yourself down, all you need to do is say to yourself, look yourself in the mirror and say, I love you. How stressful is that? Where are you going to feel that in your body? If you were to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I love you, would you believe it? Would that be a helpful thing for you to do? Or would it feel almost the same as the punch in the guts you get from somebody saying something horrible to you? I know for a lot of people, it's almost as heavy duty a punch in the guts to say that. If you can, then fantastic. I love that you can do that. But most people can't. So this is my little caution around affirmations. If you are going to use an affirmation, then I would be much more careful about how you phrase them. So instead of saying something like, I love you to yourself in the mirror, because in time, maybe you can say that, but to start with, maybe not. How about, I am safe in my body. Every day I feel better than the day before. I am divinely supported by the universe. If you wanted to be a little adventurous along the love line, you could say, I am love. I am loving. I am lovable. And here's a doozy. I am worthy of love. How does that one sit for you? I am worthy of love. Do you think you could bring that one in? Personally, I love the I am safe in my body. I feel like that's a good place to start with affirmations. Or each day I feel better than the day before. These are achievable because with an affirmation, you need to be able to believe it. Because if you can't believe it and you can't raise your emotional energy around it, then it's actually going to backfire on you and it is going to cause a stress reaction in your body. And as you've learned, stress reaction, release of cortisol, release of inflammation, more pain. So in the end, you're shooting yourself in the foot. So other self-care things that you can set up. A gratitude. I'm not a fan of a gratitude journal. That feels very rigid. But if that works for you, then do that. But when you wake up first thing in the morning, before you get out of bed, if you could lay in bed and think of even 2 things that you can be happy about. For me, I wake up in the morning and I have bamboo sheets on my bed and they are so comfortable. And I wake up and I'm all snuggled in them and I can sit in there and think, oh, I love my bamboo sheets. I love that in half an hour I will have my first cup of coffee and it will smell great. I love that I can hear the birds singing outside. I love that I can hear the rain on the roof. Come up, it doesn't need to be anything life-changing, but just gratitude for the little things in your life. Because the importance of this is, you remember how I was talking about your body can't tell the difference between real and perceived. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to find ways to fill the body with feel-good hormones as opposed to stress hormones. So because your body can't tell the difference between real or perceived, if you sit and you go into some gratitude practices and raise your emotion around, oh, I love that the cat is sitting on top of my head and I can't move because I don't want to disturb it and I'm hearing it purring and that brings me joy. Whatever it is, hold on to that feeling of gratitude and build it in your body. I'm going to come back to that in a couple of minutes because there's a whole practice we can do around that. So self-care. Go for a massage. Go for a steam or a sauna. Find what works for you and be gentle with yourself. You know, if you find that you're still constantly going into your negative self-talk, notice it. Be gentle to yourself instead of going, oh, you're doing it again. Ah. Instead of going into that, try and go, okay, I see you. I see that you're still in that pattern. That's okay. Right now, I'm going to put my hand on my chest and I'm going to take a breath. And I'm going to bring one of my gratitude things in. I'm going to bring one of my happy memories in to replace that. The last little putting myself down that I did, I'm going to bring a different memory in. And if all you can do is notice it for the next 6 months, 12 months, 12 years, if all you can do is notice it and stop it, that's enough to change the neural pathways in your brain. And eventually what happens is you kind of can feel when you're going to head into that negative talk to yourself, and you can go, oof, hang on. Before I go there, let's bring in a happy thought. Let's change the picture. And eventually what happens is you do the negative self-talk less. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not going to say it's going to happen overnight, because it won't. But bringing an awareness to it is a start. So find some stress release techniques which work for you. It may just be simply taking a breath when you are in the moment. It may be tapping. Have you ever seen people doing tapping? That's a really good release. Don't have time to go into the tapping tonight, but that's a whole other thing you can Google on YouTube. There are lots of tapping videos, very helpful. Get out into nature as much as you possibly can. Bit of grounding. And if you can't get out into nature because you are living in the middle of a concrete jungle, then there are lots of other ways that you can ground. And in fact, I have a whole other workshop that I did last year. Get out of your head and into your body. You can download that and get some tips from that. You can be creative if you're feeling stressed. Get out your pencils, your color pencils, or some paints, or some clay, or some jewelry making, or your knitting needles. Get creative, because what that does, it brings you into the present moment and takes you out of your head talk thing and into what you're doing, focusing on that present moment. Listen to music. Back to the music. Music, you can, if heavy metal's your thing, put your AirPods in, put your heavy metal on. If you're feeling high anxiety, high stress, if you're feeling in a lot of pain, bring your music in. Classical, new age, bit of Joni Mitchell, whatever floats your boat. Whatever floats your boat. But music's a great one. So start to increase your self-care, because if you're not looking after yourself, you can't look after anybody else. If you're not looking after yourself, your inflammation goes up, your pain goes up, everybody else suffers because you can't be present for them. Okay, the last one is expectations. The perfectionist in me has high expectations. I'm sure it's the same for a lot of you too. But be realistic. You are not going to leave this workshop and go, I'm great, I'm perfect, I love myself, I can completely control my pain, I can control my inflammation. Be realistic. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of kindness to yourself to be able to manage inflammation. Set some small goals and build upon them. So if you have a goal that, I'm going to notice when I put myself down. Now, something with putting yourself down, you can do it in your head, but sometimes we do it out loud. So maybe the first thing to start with is to notice when you are putting yourself down out loud. So if somebody says, "Oh, wow, that shirt looks great on you, that color really suits you," instead of going, "What, this whole thing? Oh, I found it on the chair," the chair with things that have been worn once and aren't dirty enough to be washed. Instead of going down that self-depreciation, "Oh, no, this is just, ugh." I challenge you. How about instead of putting yourself down and saying, "Meh," you go with, "Thanks." That's all it needs to be. You don't need to qualify. "Thanks." Or, "Thanks, it's my favorite color." Or, "Thanks, I've had this shirt for forever and I feel really comfortable wearing it." Is that something that you think you can manage? So bringing a small goal, or if you find you're somebody who constantly apologizes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't, I'm sorry I'm in front of you." Notice how often you say, "I'm sorry." Because that in itself is an inflammatory thing. It's a making yourself small. "Oh, I don't want to be seen." And that's a really tough one. Notice how often you say, "I'm sorry," and see if you can preempt yourself from saying it. That one's a challenge. Celebrate your wins and celebrate them hard. So if you go out with your friends to that dinner where you know there's food that you can't eat, that you wouldn't normally eat, and you have a glass of wine, celebrate it. While you're holding your belly or, in pain, celebrate that you made a decision to let go of one of the restrictions that you have on yourself. I'll quickly go into a little heart coherence. Now, you may or may not have heard of it. I'm not going to go hugely into it. But heart coherence is a physical, emotional, and mental harmony. It's all of those different bodies coming into alignment, which sounds great. But most of us don't do it. So the technique to bring yourself into heart coherence is slow breathing. So taking 5 or 6 slow breaths per minute. So just really slowing your breath down. So we're going to do a very simple heart coherence exercise now to take us to the hour. So we're going to just hand on heart or belly or both to bring you into your body. And I want you to just take some slow conscious breaths in. So a slow breath in and out. And in and out. Now what I'd like you to do, you keep on with that breath while I talk. So what I'd like you to do is imagine something that brings you joy. What brings you joy? I talked about my sheets, or the smell of coffee, or the cat purring, or patting the dog, or I love babies, the smell of babies' heads. So pull in one of those things that lights you up, that just brings you joy. And if you can, while you're doing that slow breathing, imagine that feeling settling into your heart as you're breathing. So imagine you're taking a breath in and out of your heart. I'll stand. A breath in and out of the heart. And also imagine that feeling of joy, that feeling of, oh, this is what lights me up. And build on that emotion. So say for me, it's the baby. And you're smelling the baby's head and feeling its little rolls of fat and just hearing it giggling. And so bring in all the aspects of that joyful thing. And feel that emotion growing in your heart space as you're taking those long, slow breaths. And if you can, you might want to close your eyes down. If you feel safe to close your eyes down, you don't have to. But imagine feeling that emotion of that thing that fills you up, that lights you up with joy. Feel that emotion growing. Feel it getting bigger and filling all of your cells. Feel it growing to fill your whole body with that joy, that absolute joyful experience, that thing, that smell, that touch, that sound. Bring in all of those sensations and grow that feeling so it fills your body and it starts to fill out to the outside of your body, so that it grows, it almost fills you in a bubble of that amazing elevated emotion of joy. And if you can, as you're breathing, visualize that bubble of light that's around you expanding to fill the room, expanding to fill your house or the building that you're in, expanding to fill your whole neighborhood, and expanding even further to fill your city, your country, expanding to fill the whole of the earth, if you can imagine that joy just growing, expanding out to the whole universe, if you can take it that far. And if you can't, that's fine. Just expanding that elevated emotion and sitting in that joy for as long as you possibly can. That is heart coherence. That is bringing the happy hormones into your body. That is elevating you. And these happy hormones, if you get into a practice of doing this regularly, then you start to overtake your body with happy hormones rather than stress hormones. How does that sound? Very quickly, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite books. So, The Four Agreements. I don't know if you've come across it. Here we go. Don Miguel Ruiz. And I'm just going to read what the Four Agreements are, because once I read this, it just so much dropped away from me, so much of the stress. So the first one is, be impeccable with your word. Now, this is pretty much the basis of everything I've been talking about tonight. Be impeccable with your word. Be careful how you talk about yourself, and be careful how you talk to yourself. But also be careful how you talk about others and to others. The second one is, don't take anything personally. Wow. That one's a bit of a slap in the face, isn't it? Don't take anything personally. People are coming at you from wherever they are, and if they're saying something horrible to you or being unkind to you, it's generally a reflection of where they are, rather than what you've done to them. Number 3, don't make assumptions. Wow. How many times have you gone, oh, look, I'm not going to that dinner because that person always triggers me. And when I go, then they say this, and then I feel horrible, and then I say something, and then this other person gets upset, and this happens, and this happens, this happens, this. And so you create this whole scenario in your head, and it's not going to even happen for another week. But you've created this in your head, and your body has a stress reaction, creates cortisol, increases inflammation, and increases your pain. And none of it's actually real. I know I am so good at that one. Don't make assumptions. That's a tough one. And the fourth one, always do your best. You can't do more than your best. That's all you're capable of. You can do less than your best, but you can't do more than your best. So that's a really good one. That's the perfectionist in all of us. We cannot do more than our best. Those are the 4 agreements. I like to add one more that isn't in the book, but this is one of mine. What other people think of me is none of my business. How simple would life be if we didn't actually care what other people's opinions were? How much simpler, how much less stress would we have in our lives if we thought that? I'll leave you with that one. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the hour. What I'm going to do for those who need to go off, have kids or dinner or breakfast, or depending on where you are, I'm just going to talk really quickly about how you can work with me. So there are a number of ways. The first one is that we can do a one-on-one medical intuitive session to look at what is going on the emotional, mental, spiritual, as well as physical aspects of your body. So the why behind your pain. And we can do that face to face, or we can do it online via Zoom. Or we can do a lymphatic drainage or craniosacral. Those need to be in person here in my clinic. I can do an online consultation for a lymphatic or lipedema consult. We can do one of my medical intuitive packages. I've got a couple. Well, I've got 3. So I've got a package where you can buy 3 sessions and you use one a month over 3 months at a discounted price. Or you can join one of my 2 12-week packages. The first one is Reconnecting to Self, which is, for generally women, but it could be men as well, who just don't know who they are anymore. Your kids have grown up, you've spent your life finishing other people's foods, you don't know what you like anymore, you're in pain. This is a 12-week deep dive into reconnecting with who you are. Or I've also got a 12-week Living Well with Lipedema package for women with lipedema. All of this is available on my website, so you can get more details there. And I'm going to put the links up into the group once we're done. And I have a couple of video series. So I've got the Easy Clean Living Guide, which is all about the toxins in the environment and how to get them out of your home, out of your skincare, out of your food, how to recognize them and make changes. And I've got Self-Treatment for Lipedema. That's a 3-video package as well. And then I've got my last workshop was Get Out of Your Head and Into Your Body. So that's all about grounding. Okay, so that brings us to the end, and thank you so much for spending time with me. Does anybody have any questions or topics they'd like covered at another time? Maybe what you can do is either send me a message or post in the group if there are any other topics you'd like to be covered or any other questions. But if not, then I'm going to sign off and say thank you so much for joining me in my first ever Facebook Live. I think I survived. Thank you for staying through with me. And I hope to see you again soon.